At a press conference today, the GSD could not emphasise enough that it believed these are not safety reports, but merely two reviewing documents with very little fact and links to PDF files which have not even been provided. The GSD says that not only are the reviews full of holes, but with language which is carefully structured. The report, it adds, is not based on final designs, a criticism the government had made of their safety report. In fact, it says there is so much safety information missing that it itself states that over 10 major studies will be prepared for the next phase, with assessments yet to be produced.
The government has been promising safety reports from the beginning of this year. And these are not safety reports. What this is a review by Lloyds of an assessment commissioned internally by Shell and an assessment carried out by the Health and Safety Executive. None of those assessments have actually been disclosed by the government. That is remarkable, bearing in mind some of the arguments made by Mr. Picardo that somehow, wrongly, because it's been proved to be false, the Lloyds report had been substantially reducted. And here you are, when we're dealing with the safety of people and the government is trying to allay the concerns of people, they haven't even disclosed the very safety assessments that Lloyds are actually reviewing in this document.
Are you saying this is something that's just been rushed through ahead of an election?
Oh, absolutely. And indeed, there is no doubt about that. You look at the date that Lloyds were instructed, and that was the 26th of September. It's not possible to produce any safety reports in the 3 weeks that Lloyds have actually been working on this. And actually, it's not surprising as well that we see huge gaps in the safety material that's been provided by the government. For example, there is no safety report of a risk assessment of the transfer of LNG from the ship that brings it in to the storage facilities, and that's going to happen every 14 days. There is no risk assessment of how the surrounding areas impact on those storage facilities, and there is no risk assessment about how the power station itself will impact on those 5 storage tanks of 1,000 cubic meters each. So you can see that it's being rushed because this is not comprehensive, just simply in order to window dress and attempt effectively to hoodwink the electorate.
The GSD says the community deserves nothing less than to have it demonstrated that the project is safe, something which it claims these documents can't do. It states there is no question that LNG is an extremely hazardous substance, with the EU precautions 100 times more stringent than when dealing with diesel.
The HSE consider a worst-case scenario. The worst-case scenario is one of the 5 tanks of 1,000 cubic meters failing, and on the basis of that, just one tank, they say, well, the gas cloud wouldn't reach waterport terraces. What they don't consider, and indeed Lloyds flagged this up, is that the failure of one tank causes a domino effect on the other 4, and then you have a failure of 5 tanks of 5,000 cubic meters. And of course, if that happens, then undoubtedly there would be a gas cloud that would reach not only waterport terraces, but large parts of the western face of Gibraltar, which is what the Lloyds report that was disclosed by Spark indicated.
There's one thing that the GSD has highlighted. It proves that there's a risk, the fact that the bunkering will take place at night when there's no cruise liners. But of course, bunkering takes place all the time now.
Well, the bunkering aspects of this has always been absolutely critical. And you may recall that the government lambasted the GSD for potentially depriving Gibraltar of this wonderful economic activity. That's been taken out of the safety reports here, and what the government is saying is, well, we'll deal with that in the future. I think that's not honest politics, because just as they're doing fishing with nets, for example, where they're waiting to legislate after the general election, they will then deal with the question of bunkering after the general election. And I don't believe that is right. You've got to offer alternatives to people at the election so that they have all the facts before them and they can make decisions. But that aspect of it is very dangerous, because the risk is associated with the handling of LNG. You're having a ship that's coming in every 14 days in order to discharge LNG to these 5 storage tanks here in Gibraltar. And there is no risk assessment at all of that operation. That's why I say that there are huge gaps in the safety documents that have been provided to the people of Gibraltar and have been disclosed by the government.
The party highlights that in their conclusion, Lloyds states that further work is required and that they do not acknowledge any approval on their part, quoting instead the Health and Safety Laboratory report as saying they do not advise against project. This, says the GSD, shows Lloyds is non-committal on the safety of LNG safety for this project and does not want to be associated with it until more work is done, adding it's not a resounding vote of confidence.